I'm happy that they made that selection. And now, if you look at the receivers room, it's probably one of the strongest positions on the football team. With Jalen Reagor last year, Hightower, the guys that they have, and Devonta certainly comes in with the pedigree to be right away an asset and a guy who can add a lot to that position. I think they're going to be in pretty good shape there.
And we have Mike Quick in the house.
What's up, guys?
How you doing, Mike?
Fantastic. Jody Mack, do me a favor.
Well, I'll tell you, I do you a favor. Eagles-Falcons, week number 1 down in Atlanta. Is that a good game for the Eagles to be opening with, Mike Quick?
I think it's a good start. I'd like to see them at home on the very first game, but yeah, I like that as a start. So that's confirmed?
Yeah, it's confirmed.
Oh.
Week 1, Eagles will be going to Atlanta, Mike. The full schedule will be announced tonight, obviously, at 8 o'clock.
Right.
But I did, bigger news to me yesterday, and I wanted to get your thoughts on this right off the bat, because you and Merrill went through this weird season like all of us with the pandemic.
Yep.
No fans in the stadium, very few fans for a couple games, but for the most part, no fans. Now we know Lincoln Financial Field's going to be full for it won't be week 1, but week 2, most likely, of the NFL season. How exciting is that going to be for you and Merrill to get that environment back? Never mind the team.
And I just think it's the way the game is meant to be played. You need spectators. And yeah, we dealt with something the last season that we've never experienced in our lifetime. And it was such a strange ordeal to go through. You go to the stadium and absolutely nobody there. It really felt like a high-end scrimmage. Some of the scrimmage games that we've witnessed in past years where teams go and visit other teams, and that's really what it felt like with no fans, and then the networks piping in sound to make it appear as if fans are in the seats. But you deal with what you have to deal with, and I think the radio station and everybody, the Eagles and everyone involved, did an outstanding job of both protecting us and putting out the quality of broadcast that we've had over a number of years.
You guys did a great job, a little bit better than the team did on the field at 4-11-1. So we tip our hat to you guys. How much difference do you think it made for the players, Mike? I know you get a chance to talk to these guys, not every day, not like you usually do because of the pandemic, but you get a chance to at least hear what the players are saying, maybe third hand, maybe to another party. How much do you think it affected all the players and or the Eagles in specific playing in front of an empty Lincoln Financial Field, which is exactly the opposite of what they're used to?
There is no question that it affected the players in a similar fashion as it did us as broadcasters. They're just used to that energy. There's nothing that can replace the juice and energy of a stadium filled with fans, and especially Eagles fans, because they're just different. They bring it. They make for players on the field, it gives you that extra energy. It gives you that extra boost. When you need a lift, you can get it from the fans in those stands. And by the way, if you're not playing well, you're going to hear that
too. Which they were not playing well last season for long stretches, Mike. And I do want to, obviously, you were a great receiver with this team, so I want to talk to you about that position first.
Yep.
In a modern environment, Mike, it's 2 consecutive seasons where this team hasn't had a receiver with over 600 yards receiving. I think you could do that. If you stayed healthy, you could go out and get over 600. How important is it to have Devonta Smith to add some juice to this offense, the Heisman Trophy winner from Alabama?
If you look at the league now and the way the NFL is going, it's really like fast break basketball. It's getting up and down the field, and it really starts with having wide receiver, having talent on the outside that can beat defensive backs, that can beat any type of coverage in the secondary and put up points. That's kind of what the league is going to. And even if you look at the way that they've taken away a lot of the things that the defensive backs can do, I think it's just an effort to have more scoring in the game, more excitement in the game in terms of scoring. And you have to have quality wide receivers. You have to have blue chip wide receivers because, they're drafting and finding these guys that are so talented on the back end to stop you. That's what you have to have. And I'm happy that they made that selection. And now, if you look at the receiver room, it's probably one of the strongest positions on the football team. With Jalen Reagor last year, Hightower, the guys that they have, and Devonta certainly comes in with the pedigree to be right away an asset and a guy who can add a lot to that position. I think they're going to be in pretty good shape there.
I'd say they got a lot of potential in that wide receiver room. Still got to go out there and prove it. I want to ask you to compare Devonta Smith to a guy who you should know quite well by the name of Mike Quick. When you first came into the National Football League, you weren't a Megatron, a guy who was going to go out and physically dominate and just be able to jump over everybody. You weren't Bullet Bob Hayes running a 4.2 40. You were just a quality wide receiver and took in all aspects of the game. Little physicality, little speed, great route runner, good hands. That's what I see Devonta Smith as. That's why I've compared him to Mike Quick, the last all-pro wide receiver the Eagles actually drafted and developed. Do you see any of your game in his game?
I absolutely see, Jody, what you see. He's extremely talented as a route runner. Catches the ball really well. One of the things that I was really impressed with when I put on the tape, because I wanted to look at the top receivers that were coming out. When I watched him, a guy at only 170 pounds, catch the ball in traffic, catch the ball over the middle, and even when he took a shot, you didn't see him shy away at all. You didn't see any hesitancy. When a guy plays that way, that fearless way that he plays, I have a lot of respect for that. And for a guy to catch 117 balls in the SEC, I got a lot of respect for that because you're playing against the best of the best at that level, and you're still able to dominate at 170 pounds.
Now, Mike, I do want to play a little devil's advocate because you played, I'm guessing you're 6'2", 190-ish maybe?
Yes.
190 to 166. That's what Devonta weighed in as. And you mentioned the concern for me from the outside looking in is what you just said. He plays like he's 190, 200 pounds. He plays in a fearless fashion.
Yep.
Could that hurt because he isn't 190, 200 pounds?
Right. But if you look at the history, he's not a guy that's been injured very much. He's fearless, but he's also smart. He understands defenses, and he has the awareness to make sure that he gets down and he doesn't suffer those big hits. You rarely saw him take a big hit throughout his entire career. And one of the things, I love the scouts that go out and time these guys and measure their hands and their arms and, of course, the weight and speed, all of that stuff. But the biggest measurement, I think, is in his chest. And I think there lies the difference between he and a lot of players. I just think he's, a lot of coaches and players, they talk about he's got that dog in him. Well, this is a little guy that's got a big dog in him.
We'll see if that dog is ready to bark week 1 against the Atlanta Falcons. All right, you mentioned the room, and you think that could actually be a position of strength for the Eagles this year. If some of the receivers already on the roster is very young, step up, take that step up this year. So let me touch on a couple of guys, and you tell me, like a Travis Fulgham, like a J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, who has been a disappointment so far, like a Hightower, maybe even a Quez Watkins. Out of that group, which one do you think is most likely? If Smith's going to do what Smith's going to do, and we believe that Reagor is going to have a better sophomore season than his freshman year, out of the others, which one do you think is most likely to be the number 3 receiver on this team?
So that's a tough one, Jody. When I look at Hightower, I see a really polished wide receiver, can run all of the routes, has tremendous speed. I think he has to grow up some. I think he has to mature a lot to play at this level. Quez Watkins, not as polished as a receiver, but with the ball in his hands, he's probably as good as anybody on the roster. These are the 2 guys that I'll pay particular attention to, because I think they can add a lot to this receiving room, to this football team in terms of production. I think Quez is, we saw him on just a couple of plays last year. Saw him when they got it to him quickly, and he blazed by the entire defense to score a touchdown. I think he has a lot. If Hightower grows up, you're going to have 3 tremendous receivers. And I think Quez is a guy that's more likely going to be in the slot and do a lot of the gadget stuff after Jalen Reagor. But Hightower, to me, can do it all. He to me, has the most potential to take off and be that next guy.
Interesting. Mike, I want to shift gears with you a little bit, because you had your charity golf tournament. Doug Peterson was back in Philadelphia. I think we all were disappointed how that ended. We all know what kind of guy Doug is. Curious if you got to catch up with him. And then the new coach, I want your first impressions on Nick Sirianni, the energy he's bringing to this building, this organization.
So, Doug, I was just so happy to see him back in the area, and he was so excited. I had my golf event yesterday, and a lot of guys come out to support it. But when I talked to Doug, he didn't even hesitate. He said, "Yeah, I'll be happy to fly up," and he was great. And I'm sure, I know a lot of the news stations got a chance to talk to him. He seemed to be so relieved right now and so at peace and comfortable with what he's doing, which is just playing golf and fishing. and he's happy there. But seems to be doing really well. And it was a lot of fun to catch up with him. What was the second part of that, John?
Nick, what your thoughts? Nick. Yeah. Your early thoughts on Nick.
So early thoughts, you could see how nervous Nick is coming into the position that he is. But I think that's been true for everybody. When you elevate and you get to a new position, when you're not yet comfortable, you kind of look like a fish out of water a little bit. But the guy has a lot of football knowledge. I'll start with that. He grew up around the game, his father, his brothers. He's been in some of the best systems to learn football for any coach that's going to coach this game. As he gets comfortable in his skin as a head coach in the NFL, I think he's just going to continue to grow. But the football knowledge and the energy that he brings, a major asset to this football team. Got a lot of young players on this team that he'll be able to relate to. And as these older guys get to know him and get to understand the knowledge that he brings, they will gravitate to him. And I think, you never know how a coach is going to mature and grow into his shoes. But when Doug Peterson was hired, I was really shocked and didn't think that Doug could do the job. A couple of years later, he gives the Eagles the first Super Bowl they've ever had. So, and I'll take it back even a step further. When Jeffrey Lurie hired Andy Reid, who knew Andy Reid?
Yeah.
I didn't know Andy Reid, but Andy Reid turns out to be one of the best coaches that ever coached in Philadelphia. So I will give Nick Sirianni the benefit of the doubt because I know he's a football guy. And I think as he grows into his shoes as a professional head coach, I think we'll be pleased with him.
Mike, let me ask you to put your former player hat on here. I want to follow up on John's question about not only the head coach, but the coaching staff. You went through coaching changes when you were a player. Granted, the NFL is a little different in 2021 than during your playing days, but How long does it take a player to get comfortable? I'm not talking about the rookies, but someone who's here in Philadelphia last year, played under Doug Peterson. Some go back to the Super Bowl wins, some just the last couple of years. How much time does it take for the players and the new coaching staff to get ingratiated with each other, that they're all on the same page, ready to go, get a season started? Can it be done in one preseason?
No. That's my short answer. But I think it can and will be done, but it does take time. The coaches have to understand players, who you are as a player, what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are. You've got to know the people. And, Dick Vermeil always had this saying, players don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Now, when they see the sincerity from Nick Sirianni, when they see what he's willing to give and put in as a head coach, then all of those relationships will start to grow. But until you know that, until you see that, you're just kind of getting to know one another. So they'll have to go through that process. You don't know, like when Jim Johnson first took on Brian Dawkins, he didn't know all the things that Dawkins could do. And so once he started to utilize Dawkins and understand Dawkins, and he could do so many things with him because he knew that Doc would make certain plays, that he knew that against certain teams, if I plug Doc in right here, he's going to be very disruptive. That takes a little bit of time in knowing those people, the players, before you can get to that. And so with all of these guys, it's going to take a little bit of time to know these receivers and know what they can do and the matchups that you're going to have the most success with them. But I do believe that you've got a lot of young, smart coaches on this staff that they'll figure it out.
Mike, last one from me. I want to follow up on that because the rookies are coming in today.
Yes.
They're going to have rookie camp starting on Friday. I'm curious how much things have changed from the time that you broke into this league when it comes to off-season work, because, you were a two-time All-Pro, a five-time Pro Bowl selection. You just mentioned it's hard to get up to speed. The environment today, they don't have as much time, the coaches, to work with young players. How difficult has it become, and how much has it changed?
It's changed a whole lot, John. And if you talk old school, the old school guys would think that, they would be handicapped in the system now, where the collective bargaining agreement limits the time that you can have guys on the field, limits the off-season training. But I think it's a smarter way of doing things. I think without all the collisions that we had in those training camps where you had double-day practices, all in pads, hitting both practices, where you really break guys down during that 4 weeks, 6 weeks training camp. And then you have to try and allow your body to come back. And sometimes it would take you 3 weeks during the regular season before you really felt like somebody, because the training camps beat you up so much. I think the way they do it now, where there's more of skull sessions, where you're learning more, where you're running around in shorts and a helmet, you don't know enough about the football player when he's under stress in those situations, but you do get to learn a lot of football in those situations. It's a lot different than it was back when.
Mike, as a former All-Pro wide receiver, you can judge quarterbacks with absolutely anybody. We got a 3+ game look at Jalen Hurts last year when he replaced Carson Wentz.
Yeah.
To you, what is Jalen Hurts' biggest strength, and what is the part of his game that he most needs to upgrade going into this season as the man here in Philadelphia?
I think any young quarterback, Jody, they see so many things from the other side, on the other side of the ball, on the defensive side. You have to learn how to anticipate what they're doing. And that only comes from studying and the experience and being able to counter what they're doing on the defensive side by putting the ball in the right places. He has to learn to be a better quarterback from the pocket. I think one of his biggest assets is his ability to make plays when there's nothing there, his ability to improvise when you have to make a play because the play breaks down, be it because of the offensive line or your number one or number two target is not open and you've got to improvise. I think that's certainly one of his biggest assets. But in this game, if you're going to really be successful, you have to have both. You have to have the ability to move around and not necessarily run, but moving to avoid hits in the pocket and still making plays down the field. But then when all else fails, that ability to run with the football, and he has shown that.
Fair enough. Mike, last one, quickie. Who shot lower on Monday, you or Merrill?
Well, I would say Merrill, because I didn't keep score. I just kind of
Good for you. That's why I didn't ask about Doug, because we know he's taking his golfing thing very seriously these days. So I would have certainly gotten a bunch of strokes for him if I was playing against him. But I figured you and Merrill had a little handshake agreement on who shot lower. Mike, we appreciate you coming on with us today. We'll tap into you every once in a blue moon. Hopefully you can join us here on Birds 365. Enjoy watching the schedule reveal tonight and get ready to call Eagle games in front of crowded stadiums this year, buddy.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Mike.
That is Mike Quick, radio analyst for the Philadelphia Eagles, one of the best guys here in town, and gave us some straightforward answers, some interesting answers. I want to follow up on his comment about the Eagle wide receiver room, which when we come back. Take a quick time out. We'll come back. The Mac and Mac guys, McMullen and McDonald, here with you on Birds 365.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.